Thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney in London as we discuss the next steps in personal computing. I'm wearing a Quest 3 headset, and David is wearing the 3S. Each of us is wearing last generation Meta avatars. We're using hand tracking with built in microphones. And we're pre recording this episode this week because we've got a full day, almost a full week of announcements planned at UploadVR.com and on our YouTube channel. So tune in to all those new premieres that we've got coming out on our channel because we have a lot of really cool things lined up from the community. Thank you to our patrons, including Mike Manzano, HoloNet, Podum, the developer Smash Drums, as well as XR Developer News, as well as thank you to all of our members and commenters on every single platform. Make sure you are inviting new people into this community because we expect a lot of new people to be joining in headsets over the next few weeks. David, what do we have today?
Hello, everyone. Again, unfortunate that we're pre recorded this week, but we hope to be back to live next week so we can get that live interaction. Today, we're going to talk about 5 subjects: the announcement that Apple Vision Pro is coming to Taiwan, VRChat adding age verification to enable adult only spaces, Quest 3S now showing on the Steam hardware survey, but with a major caveat that we'll discuss, the new XREAL One series of virtual display glasses and the interesting new features that they add. And finally, we will talk about PlayStation VR2 seemingly now having controller free hand tracking. So it seems that developers, if they want, can now use hand tracking on PlayStation VR2.
Yeah, we'll see what kind of argument we get into about the future of this medium here near the end of the show as we get into those last few subjects. We're in this time of year where it's just a nonstop onslaught of news that's coming at us from every direction. And yeah, we hope to be back with live next week. But gosh, Don Hopper and I just did the games cast and we covered some of the things we covered here. We talked about VRChat a little bit over there, but we're going to discuss it on the broader angle, industry wide angle here. And of course, Behemoth is coming out. I Am Cat is out on Apple Vision Pro. A big list of things that are releasing between now and Christmas time as devs try to line up that interest and build long time love for their platforms going to the next little bit. I'm really excited to talk about the XREAL One late into this show, but let's talk about these first few ones, David, with this first Apple Vision Pro announcement. What's the latest here?
So there's not a lot to discuss for this one, but we do want to note it, especially given that you sometimes see these media narratives of Vision Pro being dead. You even had this kind of myth that Apple was going to discontinue it imminently. And the reality is that the opposite is happening, right? They're expanding it to more countries in the world. Last month, we saw it come to Singapore and the United Arab Emirates. And now, this month, December, we're seeing it come to Taiwan. So it will arrive in Taiwan on December 17th. And Thursday, which means today, by the time this show goes out, pre orders will open. And in recent months, we've seen Apple's focus for this headset really be on expanding the immersive media content, Apple Immersive Video. We saw the first scripted short film with Submerged. Then we saw the first music video in Apple Immersive format from The Weekend. And we expect new episodes of Apple's documentary series to launch this month and early next year. So that does seem to be their content focus. As we've discussed before, and I imagine you may have discussed on Gamescast, there are also some tabletop scale diorama games coming to Vision Pro later this month and early next year. So Apple does continue to expand this headset. It is still bringing content there. It's very much so not dead.
Yeah, we talked about Figment XR over on the Gamescast at length. Highly recommend go check out that segment where Don and I have both been playing with that platform as it's been developing over time, and it really feels at home on Apple Vision Pro. Like this is the version of the app that Javier Davalos and the team over at Overlay have been building toward for quite some time, sort of imagining itself on AR headsets, and those were limited by field of view. Now you've got something that has a much wider field of view and best in class eye tracking and finger tracking, and you put all those together with the interface they built there, and that's a whole new class of application has just rolled out for this headset. And then I love David bringing up the diorama type things. I was going through the games catalog on Apple Vision Pro, and when it comes to games that overtake your landscape and just a full-fledged VR game, it's a pretty empty landscape, right? Like there's not you can go get a job simulator and vacation simulator, but there's not a whole lot in that library to play in full VR. But there's a large number of these volumetric diorama scale games that you can have multitasking in your space. One here, one here, one here, one here. I love that model for the future and can't wait to see what future hardware does with that multitasking capability of having all these widget sized games around you at all times.
Yeah, I think what's disappointing though is that that isn't universal, right? A lot of these games that we're talking about do take up a full space, which means you actually can't multitask. And the irony that we've pointed out is that if you open up something like Demio on a Quest, you can have Netflix or YouTube open as a browser window floating with you. If you do the same on Vision Pro, you can't. There is one exception to that. If you enable developer mode, you can have your Mac virtual display open inside an immersive full space app. What I'm really hoping for next year, we expect to see Vision OS 3 debut at WWDC 2025, which should happen in June as all the WWDCs happen. I really hope we see Apple bring multitasking within full space apps. That's something that there are caveats to that, right? Because the way Quest does it is that it just overlays the window. And that means if there's a virtual object in the full space app in front of that window, it will still be rendered behind. So that introduces what's called a depth conflict. It's occlusion within VR in the same sense we talk about occlusion in mixed reality. There are solutions to that. The application does pass a depth buffer. Meta could do some depth testing there. Apple could take the same approach. Then that introduces issues of, well, can you no longer see your menu if you open it and it's behind a virtual wall in a game, right? They have to really carefully think about how they implement that. There are other solutions, including having some sort of new API for full space apps to implement this. They could also expand the kind of apps that can exist in the shared space so that volumes can do more. They could even use a new kind of moving volume to allow stuff like pets. It's going to be very, very interesting to see where Apple takes this platform because, we don't expect a new headset until late 2025 to early 2026 at the earliest. But what we do expect is some significant improvements in Vision OS 3 next year, just as we saw significant improvements in Vision OS 2 this year.
I love that outline, David. That's really fantastic. And for all the Vision Pro, the Quiet Vision Pro owners out there that are watching this or listening to us on podcast platform, yeah, we hear you. We know that you're out there wanting this info, even though the masses are out there with their $300 or $500 Quest headset. There's people out there who are dying for those features that you really want. And I guess I should use this opportunity to bring up that I just figured out how to use the closed lid MacBook Air feature. So basically, as long as your MacBook is plugged in and getting power from the wall, you should be able to get Mac Virtual Display to send over what the Mac sees, even though it's in a closed form. So connect a Bluetooth keyboard, connect a Bluetooth mouse, and have that out wherever in bed, nearby, have the computer in a backpack, and you're good to go. You've got a virtual Mac display wherever you are, and that's just fantastic. The thing David just laid out there, though, like Figment XR, I was enjoying the heck out of it, and I was co-locating. You can go see the co-locating video on VR Gamescast. That's incredible. But the thing that took me out of it was I didn't have my Mac virtual display inside of Figment XR. Ideally, I would have had both.
So
But that was an improvement on what came before, so I'm not complaining too much about it.
sure, but to be clear, if you enable developer mode, you should actually be able to bring up the Mac Virtual Display with Vision OS 2. That's the one thing you can bring up inside an immersive app like Figment XR. So hopefully you get to try that at some point. But of course, the person on the Quest end, they can bring up anything, right? They can bring up YouTube, Netflix, Discord, Slack in a browser, whatever they want. So it's a big difference there. Are we ready to talk about VRChat now?
Yeah, let's get on to this. Why don't you give a little quick summary here, and then we'll talk about the wider implications.
Sure. So this is something that you often bring up that we have these virtual spaces, these kind of metaverse-like platforms, VRChat, Rec Room, Horizon Worlds. And a big issue is that while these platforms are amazing for social connection and amazing for the kind of user-generated content that some of these worlds rival full apps, right? Some of them are like full-fledged games within this platform, but a huge issue is that a lot of the time you have adults and children mixing in these spaces, and for obvious reasons, that's just not ideal and not safe. So VRChat is aware of this. It's one of the main criticisms of their platform, and they are now testing this age verification system where they partner with this company called Persona, and you provide your government ID as well as use a camera on your computer or your phone to verify your identity as an adult, and then you will get this 18 plus badge, and world creators will be able to then exclude people under 18 who haven't been verified through this system from joining a world. This is being tested in early access right now for certain creators in certain worlds. It's not something widespread, but we do expect that if this does go well, if the partnership with that company is fine, that they would want to expand this to be a general platform feature.
Yep, good summary there. Over on Gamescast, we covered this, and it seemed like the commenters were pretty much in favor of this, echoing that sentiment of the reason they don't use VR chat very often is because of this mashing together of age groups. However, as soon as we got to the implementation of it, saying that there's a third party out here that demands your government ID and your camera to be turned on for a verification step, everyone got very concerned and frustrated with that implementation aspect. Although I don't know what other implementation is possible for doing this.
Yeah, that is the issue with these questions, right? Everyone is fine with the idea until it comes to this privacy trade off, and there is a real trade off. But as you say, what else do you do in a situation like this, right? It is a huge problem that needs to be solved. VRChat is perhaps, this is complete speculation, but I imagine that when they come to getting investment and they have done successful investment rounds, I imagine one of the first questions that these investors ask is, will this become a problem? This huge problem of mixing adults and children in virtual spaces. How do you plan to tackle this? If, in 10 years' time, this platform is 10 times the size it is today, you would imagine that you would see regulators start to look at this problem and really care about it. So they do need to solve it at some point for platform trust. But as you say, there's a major privacy trade-off in solving it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I really love that layout of the situation there. It's you think about there's dual aspects in the community of people just why didn't they do this already? Also, like why are they doing this now? But I think you kind of outlined it perfectly that this this is needed as a necessary safety protocol of the platform. And if you look at what worldwide there is a movement towards regulating uh, and proving that you're of age to use the internet in various capacities. So it makes sense that you would kind of have an IDing component to these spaces online. The one unique aspect of VR chat that I have to bring up is it's the oldest platform here that was VR specific. You've got older things like Second Life, right, that have existed for a long time, but those weren't built for headset first. VR chat was the first one to come out as headset first during this new wave of stuff. You had other things like Rec Room come around as well as Horizon Worlds, all trying to appeal to this user base. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because you have people who were teenagers and kids back when this first debuted for PC VR, and now they're adults. Now they've aged out of that group. But they're still, this is their social hangout. This is the place they grew up on for those years. Yet they've actually aged through the entire lifespan. This would be as like if AOL was still alive from your teens into your adulthood. Would you still go on into the same chat rooms you did as a teenager? Probably not, right? But like that's the situation that has happened for a number of people who grew up on VR chat.
Anything else you want to add, or you want to move on?
Um, Yep, let's talk about this next one. I'm excited to talk about the last few subjects here on today's news, as it seems to be setting us up for the next few phases of personal computing here in VR. We've got the first one, and then these last two are setting up for next year. So let's talk about the Quest 3S first.
So, in past episodes, we've been hotly anticipating the November data for the Steam hardware survey. If you don't know what the Steam hardware survey is, every month, a random sample of Steam is asked to upload their PC specifications and peripherals to Valve, and then Valve collates that data each month. And the purpose of this is so the developers know, how many people have this graphics card, how many people are on this operating system, how many people have this amount of RAM or this monitor resolution. And one of the sections is VR headsets. And it actually works slightly differently from the rest of the survey. It used to be way back in the day that it would check if a VR headset was currently connected to your PC, but in around March 2020, Valve completely changed the method. So it would look at your SteamVR logs for the past month and see which headset you've used on SteamVR in the past month. So that data gets put together, and we can see the relative market share or usage share, I should say, of each headset on Steam, as well as the overall number of Steam users with VR headsets, or I should say, percentage of Steam users. So we had been anticipating Quest 3S to show up. And on Monday, when the data for November first came out, it wasn't there at all. What we did see, though, was an anomalous increase in the other section. Now, today, as of recording, it'll be yesterday as of when this goes live, Wednesday, is when this happened. Valve has added Quest 3S to the hardware survey. There is a section for Quest 3S. However, there's a major caveat to note here. While the Quest 3S listing here shows it as having 1% of usage share, many of the Quest 3S users are actually buried in the Quest 3 figure. That's because if you're connecting via virtual desktop or Meta's Quest link, your Quest 3S will present to Steam as a Quest 3. I've tested that out with QuestLink, and Virtual Desktop's developer Geek Godin has confirmed it to be the case for his app. So the growth you see here, the plus 2.32% of Quest 3, a lot of that will be coming from Quest 3S. Still, even if we do sum the Quest 3S here that's coming through Steam Link with the Quest 3 growth here that's coming from QuestLink and Virtual Desktop, that doesn't actually get us to the same amount as Quest 3 was at this time last year. So if you sum those two, you get a total maximum of 3.37%. So that would put it above Oculus Rift, but just below Windows Mixed Reality. The same time last year, the Quest 3 was at 5.2%. So it's not a dramatic difference, but it does look like Quest 3 was adopted faster by PC gamers when it launched last year than Quest 3S. And the explanation for that is very likely that the way that these headsets are positioned as products. So Quest 3 was this more expensive, $500 starting headset that has these precisely adjustable clear and sharp pancake lenses. So it's more oriented towards tech enthusiasts who are more likely to own a gaming PC, more likely to use it on Steam. Meanwhile, the new Quest 3S, it's come out a year later. A lot of those tech enthusiasts have already bought in with Quest 3. It's at its lower price point, aimed towards a more mainstream, wider audience, and they are less likely to have a gaming PC and connect it. So I think that's what explains the dynamics here when you look at the Steam hardware survey.
So a couple things I just want to throw in to think about with these numbers before we move on. When did Quest 2 stop being sold officially by Meta? Is it still being sold officially by Meta?
It's no longer sold. They basically said by the end of the year or when stock runs out. And from what I can see, the stock has run out.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a soft end to the Quest 2, which is kind of a weird thing because in the previous times they've completely shut off the previous edition sometime close to the new edition coming out. So it's like a soft end for the market leader here. The 1/3 of the overall Steam survey is still on this headset that has been shipping for 4 years, starting in 2020, hitting every price between what's like $600, depending on how much storage you get and how expensive it was down at the time, down to bargain basement, what, 250, 275 or something if you got it refurbished or on an extreme sale. So this thing
Well,
is many millions of headsets, right?
yeah, and they were selling it by 200 by the end, right? They were
Yeah.
really selling this for almost nothing. And you do see that, as you say, the lasting power of this headset will likely continue for years. It has been, Meta's longest lasting on the market headset, as far as I'm aware. And we do expect that that's going to hold its position for a very long time. But you do see now this Quest 3S number jump up significantly, noting, of course, that some of that is Quest 3S. So we kind of, when we're now analyzing this in future, we probably should just kind of sum these two and call it Meta Quest 3 family. And then you
Yeah.
see that it's, at 21%, which is, it's getting close to the Quest 2 era. One thing I also want to note here is what's gone down. If you notice, Valve Index is really starting to decline now. We saw that decline start a year ago around the launch of Quest 3. That headset is, now almost 6 years old, and it has had incredible lasting power. No other headset on this Steam has had the kind of lasting power that Index has had, but it's finally starting to lay off, right? It peaked at around 18% or something like that, and now it's starting to really gradually decline over time.
Yeah, it's funny if you talk to a certain group of people, like a Steam user, someone who's very invested in their Steam library, and maybe even someone who's owned a Valve Index, and they go, "What should I upgrade to?" It's a different conversation than the average Joe that has no Steam account and just is wanting to look at this fresh. It's like, well, the 3S or the 3 are a great proposition for you right now. Go check those out. The 3S is a wonderful introduction to VR in 2024. But if you're the Steam user or you're the Valve Index owner or even like an older uh, Vive owner from the original gen, the conversation becomes you have to also bring up, well, hey, Valve is also hinting that around the corner they may be updating their system. We've got nothing strong to put into that, but if you're heavily invested in Steam, you at least need to keep some of that in mind. Like there's certain people that just do not want to buy Meta enough that they need to have that in their mind as they're thinking about upgrading from an Index.
Yeah, as we discussed last week, those next Valve headset controllers have leaked. That indicates that 2025 may be the year we finally see a successor to Index. So I imagine a lot of Index owners are holding on, waiting for that, even though now in 2024, coming into 2025, the Index, its resolution is outdated. It's using Fresnel lenses where, the high-end headsets these days, and even the mid-range with the Quest 3 and Pico 4 have moved to Pancake, which is clearer and sharper. If you care about wireless, the only way to get that with Index is that kind of no-fio adapter, which has had mixed at best reviews. And so that's what we've seen, right? Some Index owners are holding on, the majority are holding on, but some of them have finally said, you know what, 5 years is enough. We're coming on to 6 years. I'm going to grab a Quest 3 or I'm going to grab a big screen Beyond or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a tough time to be in that camp of trying to figure out how do you extend your PC experience right now because there's so much transition happening right at this place unless you're in that Quest 3 or 3S camp and heavily invested in the storefront. It's hard to decide like, wait, am I going to get my PSVR 2 and plug that into my PC right now? It's not a clear that's not a clear offering for people. Nobody should be like buying their hardware to do that kind of rerouting right at this time because of the loss of features, right? Like you don't get everything you get out of the PS5 on a PSVR2 used with PC mode. You lose some of the features, so it's not like a recommended thing for people.
Sure. So at full price, I agree with you, but we're still now at the 350 price point with Horizon Call of the Mountain. They have that discount running for the rest of the year for anyone who thought that was just Black Friday. They are running that PSVR2 discount until the end of the year. So for $350, I actually think as a PC headset, PSVR2 does make sense. Now, to be clear, you also got to add the $60 adapter, but sure, you're not getting the eye tracking on PC. And that we called that out in our review at the time. We said that's a huge disappointment, but you're still getting a uh, OLED headset with inside out tracking and a good field of view. Those features are still there, right? So I'm not sure. I've now going back to our earlier discussion. I don't know. I wouldn't upgrade to it if I was using like an Index or something like that. But if you are uh, getting into PC VR and you just want something for seated play, you want to play a simulator, for $350 plus the adapter, PlayStation VR2 is a pretty good deal.
Very good and nuanced breakdown there. I think I'm wanting to speak for the people that are very strapped on their budget, and they're trying to make their investment last 5 to 10 years. Like, they wanna be using the same headset 5 years from now that they buy this Christmas. If that's what you were for Index, you would expect to want to do that again for your next headset. Those people in that camp, I don't think the PSVR2 is gonna be that length of time. I don't think it's gonna last you 5 to 10 years on PC, but I could be wrong. Like,
Sure.
that's one of David and my debate all this time was like, I thought this was in the cards from the start for Sony that they were gonna really shift their entire platform towards robust PC support and kind of build a partnership with Steam in an unexpected way. I still think that could happen. I don't know if it's going to happen that way, but if they do that, does Valve need to ship its next headset this year, or do they do both? And how does all of that change the Steam offering going into 2025?
I think if you want to buy a PC VR headset or a headset that works on PC to last you 5 years, you want eye tracking. And there aren't really that many good options right now that will have eye tracking on PC. PlayStation VR2 and Apple Vision Pro, neither of them let you use their eye tracking on PC. You do have HTC's new Vive Focus Vision, but then you're using those quite outdated Fresnel lenses. You ideally would want something that has pancake lenses and eye tracking. And the irony is that, like, unless I'm completely blanking on something, right now at this moment, there's nothing like that for PC. If Quest 3 had eye tracking, if you had a Quest 3 Plus with eye tracking, I would say, yeah, that's going to last you the 5 years. And
Yeah.
the reason I think you want eye tracking on PC is that you want to be able to take advantage of dynamic foveated rendering. It's not supported in a wide range of titles yet. It's still not there, but I think in 5 years it will be, especially if I say if Valve's next headset is going to have eye tracking. I mean, I would bet a kidney on that, right? Of course, Valve's next headset is going to have eye tracking. So if Valve comes out with a SteamVR headset that has eye tracking, they're going to push the developer community towards supporting foveated rendering. And then you're going to start to see all the other headsets that have eye tracking be able to leverage that too.
Yeah, beautiful. It's ironic, like, the way David described that is so perfect, but, like, we started off the show where I'm like, Figment XR with eye tracking is fantastic on Apple Vision Pro, and its one limitation is software related, where I have to be a dev to bring up Mac Virtual Display, and then I've got basically what you just described, right? I've got my PC, I've got my computer inside VR, I've got this eye tracked, game application creation platform that uses the eye tracking exactly the way it's intended, this preview of what it should do in the future. And between those two things, you have a dev platform to plan for the future with, right? Like, you really could build your app with eye tracking and pinch input and concept all your stuff out for 2, 3, 4 years in the future. But we're only speaking to the devs right there. There's no compelling use cases game-wise for eye tracked input just yet, and that's something we still have yet to see.
Yeah, I think for widespread adoption of that, you're going to need a Quest headset, a mainline one that has eye tracking. You know, if Quest 4 has eye tracking, then you could see a lot of multi-platform titles start to build around that. But right now, when it's, PlayStation VR2, but only on PS5, and then Apple Vision Pro, but only natively, not via PC, it's just there's not enough adoption there. I guess the last thing you want to note here is just this chart that shows the VR headset usage share on Steam by company, and as you can see, Meta is now exactly 2/3. This growth that's been shot in through Quest 3S and perhaps a few Quest 3s has got them up to there. Valve is now sort of steadily declining as the index gets older. HTC hasn't made any meaningful gains since the original Vive, realistically. Um, so that's the situation we're in right now. I think the thing that I really, really wonder more than anything about Valve's next headset, Deckard, is where it's going to be in the market, and will it change this? Will they come in, hot and fast with a $400, $500 headset and take on Quest 3 directly at its price point, or will this be a $1,500 experience? Or as one of our commenters suggested in the after show comments for last week, Will they do a tier, right? Will there be a Deckard S and a Deckard Pro? We don't know. We don't know any of these things. I'm fascinated to see what Valve shows up with next year, if it is next year.
Yeah, this chart is one of my favorites that David has put together because it visualizes the changes in the market and the kind of internal debates we have, or the ways in our audience and even ourselves we have trouble visualizing or thinking about the opportunity here, right? Like 66% here on this chart just indicates the size, it hints at us the size of the elusive market that Meta is able to, the Meta has a lockdown on for standalone content. We know that 2/3 of active VR headsets in use have by default a standalone game,
To
a
be clear,
standalone store.
in use on Steam. This is only Steam. The
Yes.
crazy part about this is that when you consider that the majority of Quest owners likely never connected to a gaming PC, Meta's market share is probably way in towards this. We're probably talking like an 80% market share overall, with the strongest competitor there, being Pico and PlayStation VR2.
Yeah,
This is
it's
only the people that connect to Steam.
that's why it's such a fascinating thing to me, right? Like this is just it's hinting at that larger market that you're hinting at. Like there's this larger VR market than what's represented here. While at the same time, this is the market of stuff that is still getting paid to Steam. Like this is all Steam money, right? This is all money going to Steam's pocket. And your point is that's still a fragment of the overall market that Meta is able to achieve by going standalone. And yet Valve knows this, right? Like they know that they're only getting a fragment of the available VR market. It happens to be a very high paying amount because you're going and paying what, 50 or $60 for games like Half-Life Alyx, and Vertigo 2 is out there with a great game, Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. All these great games, Blade and Sorcery, that have lived on the platform for years, are still there on Steam at full price, charging what you would expect for a big product. But like all I'm saying is you're always pointing out, and so good about pointing out, that what we're seeing here is a subset of what Meta is able to get on its platform. But Valve is also readying to try to move its number from 2 to 3% of the overall Steam market to what happens if we get 10% of Steam inside headset? What happens if we get 15% of Steam in headset? That that's I think what gets our audience excited for a Deckard possibility, and I think that's what Valve wants.
Yeah, I mean, that would require them to sell tens of millions of Deckard headsets, which would require them realistically to go for a heavily subsidized approach. But we know Valve can do that, right? The Steam Deck, Gabe Newell has heavily hinted, is sold at either cost or for some models even below cost. So when Valve wants to push a hardware product, it will do this. The Index, I don't know what they were making at launch, but I seriously doubt that they are not making a massive profit right now. Right, they're almost 6 years later, they are probably making a tidy profit on every Index seal, and they didn't, aggressively price that. You could maybe argue that for what it was at the time, that was aggressively priced, but we didn't see like on the 3-year anniversary it get cut to 800 for the full package and then 500. It just didn't happen. Part of the reason for that is, of course, that they're using the inherently kind of expensive lighthouse approach where they're using these hard drive motors and lasers. If they do come out with a headset that is much more like the headsets we see today, like Quest, it's possible that they will be able to aggressively price this thing because they know that everyone, or at least the vast majority of people that get this headset, are going to be buying content on Steam.
Yep, and this is going to lead us right to the last subject. We'll circle back on this when we talk about Sony, but I frequently wonder of just we hinted on it a previous week, but back when the HTC Vive launched, it launched with two storefronts. It launched with HTC's storefront you could go and get games from, and with Steam's storefront. And it was more or less Valve showing, yes, they were willing to partner with another company to offer your storefront alongside our own. And there's a whole different home experience. Like this has already been proven by Valve's platform years before, and here we are going to this new phase of computing that we've waited like it's felt like it's taken years longer to actually realize than it should have. But Sony has been slow to get into standalone, and you've got opportunity with Google as well to figure out how do we get our 2D Google Play app store supported on multiple platforms while not giving away everything to Meta's platform, right? Like there's multiple ways that all of these partners, all these companies can figure out how to partner as we move into this next phase of computing. And David and I are dying here to get those details. We'll have it for you on uploadvr.com as soon as possible. I think it's time for us to move on to the XREAL One because I'm excited to talk about this one. This one was surprising for me. David, why don't you break it down for us, and then I'll talk through the hands-on experience I have with it.
Sure. So XREAL has been selling these virtual display glasses for years now. And how they work is you just plug in a device. It could be your Steam Deck or your tablet or your phone via USB-C, and they display the output from that device on a fixed virtual screen in front of you. And by default, for all of the previous glasses, that has been a zeroed off display. So it's fixed to your head as you rotate and as you move your head. There's no kind of tracking going on there by default. For those older glasses, you were able to use the XREAL Beam adapter or the Beam Pro adapter device thing to achieve 3DoF tracking. And you could even, with the higher end XREAL Air 2 Ultra and very specific Android phones and or a PC, achieve 6DoF positional tracking. So these new XREAL One series of glasses have a chip built in, a chip called the X1 that XREAL says it developed in-house over the course of 3 years that allows for built-in 3DoF tracking. So you plug in your iPhone, you plug in your Steam Deck, whatever device you want to use that supports display out, and that screen, the virtual screen you see, will now be fixed rotationally. So you rotate your head and it will stay in place where it was, up, down, whatever. However, that's not 6DoF. The difference between 3DoF and 6DoF is that this will still be locked to your head positionally. So you move your head forward and it will stay locked with your head. You move up and down, left and right, and it will stay fixed with your head. So it won't really appear as if it's floating in space like a virtual screen you would have on Apple Vision Pro or Quest, but it's a lot better than the default before where it was kind of uncomfortably locked to your head. You may think like, I like the idea of something being locked in my head. In reality, because you kind of twitch so much and your head moves so much, that's not a great experience. You really don't want that. But 3DoF is a good balance of the cost that these devices offer and the kind of practicality and portability where, as you're rotating your head, that's still going to stay in place, just like with Oculus Go, but without the challenges of interactivity there. So the other advantages that these bring is they've increased the field of view. They've gone up for the base model, XREAL One, it's 50 degrees diagonal. And for the higher end model, XREAL One Pro, it's 57 degrees. And that's actually market leading, right? There is no other transparent optical system that you can get in glasses form factor today that achieves 57 degrees diagonal field of view. For comparison, HoloLens 2 was 52 degrees. Meta's Orion prototype, which is not going to itself become a product, is 70 degrees diagonal. So 57 is actually really impressive. And for the end user, the buyer, that means that the XREAL One can conjure the equivalent of a 70-inch TV 2 meters in front of you, while the XREAL One Pro could conjure 85 inches. They also have improved the built-in audio through a partnership with Bose, and Bose is saying, this is a really great experience. I'd be very interested to compare that to the Ray-Ban Meta Glasses audio. And so they've opened pre-orders for these two models, XREAL One and XREAL One Pro. In the US, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Czechia, the Netherlands, China, Japan, and Korea. The base model, the XREAL One, is $500. The higher end one with the wider field of view, XREAL One Pro, is $600. And for the first time, XREAL One Pro comes in two different IPD sizes. We talk all the time on this show about if you're going to build something that doesn't have adjustable IPD, well, maybe you should sell different sizes. And XREAL has done that with the Pro model, so you can get it in a narrow IPD or wide IPD model that covers the general population. They say the base model will ship in mid-December and XREAL One Pro will ship early next year.
So I tried one of these glasses, a new model. They had them in New York one morning. I went over there and tried them out. It's been a while since I've tried this company's glasses. The last one I tried was when they were still called Nreal. Uh, Fascinating background there. I believe the CEO or the founder was sued by Magic Leap after leaving Magic Leap and then going and starting off this company. And I think that case eventually got dropped. But there he was, face to face with me, this person who had gone from Magic Leap to Nreal and then XREAL and built up this company independent of what Magic Leap had done. And I think it's worth bringing that out or mentioning that context because Roni Abovitz, the CEO of Magic Leap, the founder over there, has sort of indicated over time his recognition that even if Magic Leap has gone away or goes away, its place in the market was fundamental in seeding the rest of the market with interesting ideas. We saw that with Figment XR. Go check out that conversation, that article we have with Javier Davalos talking about how they got their earliest funding from Magic Leap's push into the consumer market, even though they eventually abandoned the consumer market. I insist on giving all of that context every time we bring this up because I put these glasses on and I was impressed by the virtual display quality. It felt like a good high resolution 1080p screen, nice size in front of me. Uh, the um, the I could adjust the the opacity of the lenses so that I could block out more of the environmental light in the region where the display was, and the locking of being able to sort of tether the screen in place so I could look over here through my periphery at somebody over here and then look back at my display was a really nice trade-off that I didn't really predict. Um, However, I also went and tried the Snap AR glasses quite recently, for the second time, and they had a piano training app. I think we talked about it either on here or on the Gamescast, but I tried a piano training app, and it was only maybe this many keys right in front of me that was contained within the field of view. If I moved my fingers over to these keys over here, that escapes the field of view of the Snap AR glasses. And that's a fully sixed off, sixed off for my hand tracking, sixed off for my head tracking. That's the end goal that all these headsets want to achieve. And I'm only getting a few of my fingers, and it still works. It's still genuinely like I'm still learning how to play a song on a keyboard physically in front of me, but the entire time I'm feeling very constrained, very frustrated that I'm so constrained to only these number of keys in here. I didn't feel that way for this particular use case. I wanted the rest of the operating system. I wanted sixed off and to have all of my interactive apps. But as a trade-off and, like, having your Steam Deck in your hand on a big screen up here, that's a really nice trade-off that I could see a lot of people using. I already saw one of these glasses being used on a train because of the ability to look out your periphery at the people around you and then focus back on this big TV screen right in front of you.
Yeah, they're well optimized around this single use case of having a big virtual screen pinned in front of you. They're not trying to be the kind of all everything AR product. Just as we talked about before in previous shows, with Tilt 5, that's an example of a transparent optic system optimized around a very specific use case. Well, so is this. And I think Xreal kind of, at least their engineers realize that, they can't build the kind of field of view that you need for really compelling eventual AR glasses. So this is the kind of product that makes sense first, and especially when you can sell this thing at $500 or $600. The one point of contention I would have with them is that I don't think their marketing is really sort of accurate. So
Mhm.
all this
Yeah, I got
AR
into
for
this with them
all,
face to face. Yeah, AR, I was like,
yeah,
why do you call it AR?" And
well,
they had a very vague, explanation for it. David, rip it apart, please.
sure. So they call it AR for all, and then you look at these marketing shots. There's two problems here. Firstly, what we would call augmented reality, the kind of true augmented reality that people are talking about, is the ability to place virtual objects sixth off position in the world. So you can put a Pokemon on the floor, you can pin a virtual screen to your wall, or have it floating in space so that even when you positionally move around, it's there. These are not that. The addition of 3DOF is great. And again, I want to say that these are very cleverly optimized device around a certain use case. You don't need to market that as AR. Market it as a portable TV, right? The other problem is when you look at these marketing shots, this is much, much larger than the TV that this thing can conjure. This is the kind of virtual TV you can get out of a Vision Pro with a 110-degree diagonal field of view. I think maybe 120 or something like that. This is 50-degree diagonal field of view. So if this person really did have a screen like this in XREAL glasses, they would only see a little segment of it at once. That classic Achilles heel of transparent AR. In reality, I don't understand. Well, I do understand, but I would really like them to just put out honest marketing. Show the TV as the virtual screen at the real size that the person in the glasses would see it as. But this is a problem with so much of transparent AR. A lot of the, you know, marketing for these things, a lot of the virtual workspace things, they show you as having this enormous virtual workspace around you, and the disappointment of people when they actually put these things on and realize that you're seeing this small little kind of segment that you move around, you don't have any kind of object permanence. That sucks. I mean, even with the 3DOF thing here, there is the trade-off of the loss of object permanence, right? So you turn your head and the screen is staying positioned there, but you don't see it anymore. You're looking to your side and it's not there anymore because the field of view is it's gone outside of. The advantage that you get from the kind of small field of view, though, as you say, is a sharp image because the angular resolution, right? When you have half the field of view of something that has the same resolution, you also get double the angular resolution. So it's a good product from what I understand. I've tried earlier versions. I will be trying this one soon. It's cleverly optimized, but the marketing, as usual from these sort of companies, is just completely misleading.
Yeah, so let's put David gave you the high level view. Let me give you the on the ground what he really means when he says that. So we could pull. I don't know if I've got it in the system, but the video that I showed in Gamescast of me using Figment XR co-located with a Quest 3. So my kid is in a Quest 3. I'm in a Vision Pro. Both VR headsets with opaque displays, but wide field of view, right? Wide field of view is so critical. And what I've got right here is a menu. I've got my menu system, my control panel right here. It's exactly the right distance that I want it to be in order to go back to my previous brush strokes on this thing that I'm creating right here. So I've got my workspace floating over here to my left where I'm manipulating a 3D object. I'm making something with my hands right here. And then I'm over here have my control panel for actually changing things over here. The lighting, the physics, all of that is right here. And both of these are within arm's reach and visible to me at all times. And then in the background right there, if we get the multitasking to work, but built into Figment is YouTube videos. So I can bring in a YouTube video that's playing over there large behind everything. And so I'm really working with multiple objects around me and I'm feeling completely immersed the entire time. I'm not frustrated every time I look away, as David is kind of hinting at. It's all right here. And that's just the beginning, right? Outside of these three, my main workspace, my toolbar, my video, I've got a whole bunch of other windows and things that I can interact with that are always kind of slightly in view because of the wide field of view optics. And it's all tethered in place. It's all sixed off anchored. If my kid is in there in Figment, he's co-located exactly with me. He comes over and hands me an object, and the object is in my full view the entire time. All of that, everything I just described, is not possible with these XREAL One glasses. They're not even in the realm of capability of the hardware of the device. It's a completely different class of hardware to begin with. And like, then you consider even if it was in that class, right? It would be 50-degree field of view. It wouldn't have sixed off tracking on all those things. Everything would be a huge step back from what I just described is here today on VR headsets ranging from $300 to $4,000.
Yeah, exactly. And people may wonder, why are we being unfair with this comparison? And the reason is that, we wouldn't bring up this comparison in this sense if they weren't kind of inviting it, because they're, saying this is the AR for all, this is the AR you need, not Vision Pro. And I already see some of the media coverage of this going, this is XREAL's Vision Pro moment. And it's ridiculous, right? That's an absurd thing to say. Sorry to the reporters who have made that comparison, but it is ridiculous. It's like comparing a bicycle to an SUV. They're just completely different things. And sure, there are advantages to bicycles that you don't get with an SUV. 100%, right? You can bring it through narrow passages that the car would never come down. You can, pack it up on a bus. There are all kinds of portability advantages. Just like this, it's easier to take this out of your bag or even a jacket pocket on a plane and plug it into your phone and start watching movies than it is to take a Vision Pro out of its case and get that all set up. Of course, absolutely, there are advantages to this in portability, in the fact that you have your full peripheral vision for staying aware of the real world. All of that is completely valid, but at the same time, you can't then say, and it's also going to replace your SUV, because when you want to drive from town to town, you're not getting your bicycle out for.
Hmm. Really interesting comparison there. That's a lot of things to think about. Like you could, as mentioned on the previously, I saw someone use this class of device for watching TV. It looked like from their phone on a subway, and that's a really fascinating use case to me, where it's like the headsets aren't providing enough safety for you to feel okay using your headset in public. Like you still feel socially awkward wearing this big thing, big bulky thing, but also you don't see when someone addresses you necessarily. Someone tries talking to you, it looks like you're just ignoring them, which is one of the reasons you might want to use it, while also you might infuriate the other person by ignoring them in public. You don't get that when yeah, you've got that problem to overcome, as you kind of alluded to with the different category sections. However, what you just described, David, like, do you want a bicycle or do you want an SUV? Well, I need to make sure that people know that they're not getting all the benefits of an SUV if they go and get the bicycle, right? You
Yeah.
can't tune out the real world, get this wide field of view with 5 screens all floating around. You can't get any of that out of the bicycle, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's important to note. But what we do expect to arrive later this decade um, is categories that are kind of blur the line between these two. We expect to see mixed reality headsets that use opaque displays and camera pass through, but that have slimmer form factors that start to get close to this and have an open periphery. So we saw that open periphery kind of start to be teased with Quest Pro, even though it was still a bulky and heavy device. We see with the Visor project, though we don't know when that will actually ship or if it ever will ship, that they have an interesting approach to kind of an optional periphery there. We reportedly Meta does plan to launch this headset codenamed Puffin in 2027 that will achieve that same sort of form factor. So it'll be very interesting to see at what point can you get the best of both worlds? Can you get something that has a kind of this bulky glasses form factor and gives you the kind of wide field of view, full control over pixels, and opacity that you get with opaque VR style display systems. And the one thing I do want to say on form factor is that a lot of these marketing shots are designed to make it look like these things are a true glasses form factor. They aren't in reality, right? As you can see, if you ever see someone wearing them, um, they have this kind of uh, very thick top that makes them offset. I'll see if I can find a better image for this. Yeah, you can see at the top that they're kind of very heavily offset. And I'm not saying that's a bad design. I'm not saying, it is a very nice looking product. It's just, to be clear, these are not, this exact optical system would not be suitable for the kind of AR glasses that people want from, Meta's Orion project, for example.
Yeah, you would. I was able to wear, I think, my prescription Ray-Bans on the interior of these when I wore them. So that's very bulky sort of thing. And then when you're actually looking through the lenses, I wouldn't see myself walking around in these. I would probably put these lenses away when it's time to get up and walk around because of just the decreased opacity walking around. So, yeah, good points David has brought up. But I'm still impressed by the capability of these
Yeah.
things in this form factor. I need to point that out that like they're proving out a use case, just like I think the Snap AR glasses are starting to prove out a use case for some of its software on that limited field of view glasses. Like I'm starting to see it coalesce around this form factor. It's just uh, don't mistake it for a VR headset.
Yeah, it's a clever niche. Exactly. It's good for what it is for having your low friction, highly portable virtual screen. But yeah, as we point out, despite what some of the media claims, it's not a a Vision Pro competitor or anything like that. They're very, very different products.
Yeah, well, let's move on to this last subject here as David and I try to read the tea leaves on the future from what Sony is doing. We've got CES coming up in January, kicking off a whole new year of changes in the VR market. We can expect to see those leaks start to come out over the next few weeks, hype starting to build for new things going to the new year. And here's this bit of news that David dug up and indicates some future thinking from Sony. What is it, David?
So it's very strange the way this has come out. We didn't get an official press release from Sony. There doesn't seem to be an announcement on their blog. We have reached out to Sony, so perhaps by the time that this episode goes live on YouTube, there will be a difference to the situation. But as of this recording, this just popped up in a Sony booth, an official Sony booth at SIGGRAPH Asia, the computer graphics conference, where they are demoing controller free hand tracking on PlayStation VR2. And this on screen right now, if you're watching, is the booth description card. And it lists this is available with the latest SDK of PlayStation 5. And so that suggests that VR developers building for PSVR2 can go out and integrate this right now, that they can uh, update their apps to support controller free hand tracking, or perhaps we could even see controller free hand tracking centric apps that haven't been brought to PSVR2 at all come. For example, Maestro, that app that we so strongly reviewed, where you can use hand tracking on Quest and on PC VR through techniques like Steam Link. And we could see those sort of apps come along to PlayStation VR2. So it also, this card says that the tracking rate is 60 frames per second. They claim it has low latency and displays the hand smoothly. We'll be very interested to try this out, but it's an obvious thing for Sony to do. It has the same camera positions that we see on headsets like Quest 2 and Pico 4 that we're able to get controller free hand tracking. They have a whole PS5 or PS5 Pro powering this thing. So, they always clearly did have the kind of performance needed. This is just an obvious move, and I hope we see it come to apps like Unplugged and games like that.
Yep, this goes to that overall journey of platforms that David and I kind of, I don't know, when we get our most heated in the studio is when we start debating the directions that these platforms are going in the future. And this is the biggest inkling that Sony is needing to get on board with changing of the platforms, right? How do you have an ecosystem that brings over the best of track controllers while also embracing the reality that some people are going to want to use their VR systems without any controllers at all in their hands? Um, the video, I just did this experiment for a couple days over Thanksgiving with my kid and doing Figment XR, right? He initially had controllers in his hands and then he put them down because I think his controller actually hit the battery pack hanging around his neck at one point, which was a good point about why controllers don't work well with a worn battery pack. Because if you're flinging your hands around really fast, there's a good chance you're going to hit this battery pack that's hanging from you. Well, if you move to hand tracking, you're not necessarily moving your hands in the same way and you don't have a big object in your hand to hit as you're waving your hands around. But I did this experiment where we ran back and forth between controllers, and it was magic to watch myself and him both learn an entire interface based around hand tracking where we're using this grab gesture here to move windows around. We're using the pinch gesture to draw precisely with this little reticle right off of our hand, and also able to use eye tracked interaction to interact with menus. So I could just look at a thing in a menu and pinch to select it. All of it was wonderful and a huge eye-opening moment that if Sony really wants to like play with Meta in this next phase of personal computing, right? Meta missed Meta missed the ball a little bit with Quest Pro. Like the eye tracking on Quest Pro didn't seem to be good enough to really build an entire operating system around. I could be wrong on that, David, but you played with the SDK and tools and got to see the quality of the eye tracking there. And now you've got 3 and 3S both without eye tracking. We know Meta is probably partnering with another company to get another eye tracking headset out there. But my point being is there's a window here, and you hinted at it earlier, where Valve, Sony, Apple can all make a real Google can all make a really strong point that all headsets in the future need eye tracking in order to do these gestures and to make it work with just your hands in the open air. And then it gets better when you bring controllers into the mix.
Yeah, it's interesting that technically Sony could implement a gaze and pinch interaction system on PlayStation VR2 now, right? They have eye tracking in this, they have hand tracking, so you could Vision Pro style be looking at your PlayStation UI elements and pinching with your finger to select them theoretically. In reality, it's a lot less practical on this headset because of the camera positions. They're not facing downwards like the side cameras on Quest 3 and 3S and the internal downwards cameras on the Vision Pro. So it would more likely be possible. I think that they are prototyping future interaction systems. I would say that if there is a project at Sony to build sort of consumer systems, it's possible that because of the cost and availability, that they would send out to their dozens of developers one of these things, and perhaps they have access to eye tracking on PC. We don't know.
Yeah, and I think back to the actual what input systems that these companies need to ship with their new headset models, like based on the cadence of developers and when we've heard from them on like them playing with new dev kits. If you're making a switch over to hand tracking and then you've also got to ship new controllers to devs that are compatible with hand tracking as your input, like it might take you a while to put those new controllers into devs' hands. But my larger point sort of being, if you go back 2 to 3, 4 years now at this point, where Sony saw on its drawing board that PlayStation VR2 is coming. Here are new controllers for PlayStation VR2. Let's fund this game, and this game, what Horizon Call of the Mountain, and a couple of these other games for the platform, and make sure it gets built for PSVR2. But if you know that this transition is coming in the offing right at, 2 years after you get PSVR2 out the market, what is the value to you as a company in getting all those PSVR1 games built for PSVR2 if you know that just 2 years later, we're actually changing everything again to hand tracking, and every dev needs to support hand tracking with a held object?
This opens up a huge debate, and the classic debate that we have in this industry. I'd say the only debate more ferocious than this is where to put the battery in the headset. But the hand tracking versus controllers debate, you're kind of presupposing the answer here by saying that there is this transition from controllers to hand tracking. And I think what we saw with Touch Plus controllers being included with Quest 3 and 3S was a rejection of that idea from Meta, and perhaps rejection across the industry. And what we've seen with Vision Pro is that even with excellent hand tracking, even with eye tracking, there's still an entire category of interactivity that you miss out on by not having track controllers. And if you look at, the division of Sony that's behind this is the PlayStation division, right? SIE, and their focus is on games. The vast majority of PlayStation VR2 usage is gaming. Maybe a tiny fraction of people, watch movies or something on it, but it's not the kind of headset you want to do that on anyway, and you wouldn't want to be tethered to your PS5 for that. The, I do think that the focus here is around games, and for games, controllers are going to be the way to go for a long, long time. And in fact, when you look at what is unique about PSVR2, in some ways it is the haptics, right? So the headset rumbles, no other headset does that. The trigger is resistive, right? You have this resistive trigger, so that's a level of haptics that no other platform has. And then they have these really high quality HD haptic actuators in the controllers. If anything, I think that if there is a PlayStation VR3 for a PlayStation 6 down the line that Sony is working on right now, if anything, I think they would want to have more haptics. And we've seen at these sort of conferences, Sony shows off uh, interesting ideas. I tried one out where there was this kind of adaptive haptic controller. I think they're going to go further and try to go more immersion. I don't think this is indicative. I don't think this is showing that they're changing their entire strategy. I just think, why not add this? The hardware is clearly capable of it. They can bring over games that are focused on it, like Maestro. For people who do want to try it, it's another value add. I don't think it's a change of their entire strategy, though.
I Oh, wow. Oh, so we'll see. We'll see. This one. This is our war, right? Over time. We've constantly come back to this. I think the with Figment, the demo that I saw right before my very eyes, right in this demo was my son using hand tracking, and then me telling him go grab the controllers, him grabbing his Quest 3 controllers off the table and then putting them inside of objects that are floating in space. And I watched the tracking quality improve for my eyes in a Vision Pro. I was tempted to go over and grab, I'm using a Vision Pro. I was tempted to go grab the Quest 3 controllers off the table and use them myself in this ridiculous third party way of connected to, just because of how improved the
Yeah,
controller tracking was via these few additional LEDs. I don't think anyone is going to disagree that controllers unlock an entire category of games that are not possible with open air hand tracking. But I think someone has to make the hard choice to embrace an interface that starts with hand tracking only and has that category of games that work for hand tracking only, Unplugged and Maestro and Airspace Defender, all these games that will work in a small little space right in front of you.
maybe, yeah, and maybe Sony's next headset for consumers might have hand tracking, included with a standalone interface for watching media, and then you wirelessly connect it to your PlayStation 6. Yeah, maybe. In the shorter term, I wonder, will Sony in any way try to tackle the other missing feature on this platform? So hand tracking, it's on Meta, it's on Pico, it's on HTC, now it's seemingly on PlayStation VR. But what is PlayStation VR missing that all of these other platforms now offer developers? Mixed reality. So you could imagine that without having a standalone headset, without having any other, massive strategy shift, Sony releases a PlayStation VR2 Plus, and the only difference, in theory, hypothetically, is that it has, two color cameras on the front. And it's your PlayStation VR2. It's everything it does. It's all the same in that sense. But then it also allows you to use your PlayStation 5's power to have really high fidelity mixed reality in your room. And you already see that this headset does meshing when you set up the room boundary, right? On PlayStation VR2, you look around and it's doing the kind of scene meshing that we see on Quest 3. And it did that before Quest 3 released, right? It's not using it for anything other than just suggest a nice boundary, but the capability is clearly there because they have the power of the PS5 to run these computationally expensive algorithms. Even without a hardware revision, you wonder, could they add black and white mixed reality? They do use it for pass through. You can press the button at any time to look around. It's not depth correct, but could they, if they're doing this kind of computer vision work, are they doing that kind of computer vision work too? We saw Quest 2 for a while. There were apps that were using the pass through API to have mixed reality on Quest 2. It's not as popular anymore, but there are still apps that you can run. It's not a great way to do anything. The black and white pass through on here does make that a lot less of a interesting proposition, but it's not low resolution black and white. It's like Quest 3 pass through resolution, but black and white. So that's a really kind of interesting thing of there is, would they want to do that on this and then offer a color pass through headset? Because you could imagine that attracting a wider audience for PS5 mixed reality.
Yeah, we'd love to see that join a massive price reduction for this unit, right? Go bring this down, give an outlet for all the APIs that David's talking about. The headset shaking API. Imagine like a scaring game that the monster actually shakes you. You actually feel your head shake when it actually grabs you at the end.
Resident Evil 7, that happened
Yep.
multiple times, right?
Imagine what devs can do with that, and then the resistive triggers, right? There's people that are already doing cool things with these resistive buttons, but you need lower price on your initial unit. You need a higher end in order to embrace all the new functionality like hand tracking and color pass or mixed reality. And that I could see that helping Sony a lot. The question is, how open are they? How are they going to work with PC and get it to be open as PC is?
Well, I think they've shown with their PC adapter that they don't care about bringing all the features to PC. We have this debate a million times, but I do think it's just a way to help them shift some units. I don't think that's a part of their strategy. But let's, talk about that idea of bringing the price of this down to and introduce a PSVR2 Plus with mixed reality. Um, we're still in this era where, as I said earlier in the show, for the rest of the year, this thing with Horizon Call the Mountain, normally a bundle that's $600, is $350. We are coming up to the second anniversary of PlayStation VR2 in February. I wonder if for January this thing goes back up to its normal price, and then on the second anniversary in February, Sony says, "We've seen how much this is sold. It flew off the shelves at 350. This is now permanently 350." And then they say, "And here is PSVR 2 Plus with mixed reality for 450 or whatever, 400, whatever."
Or 600, yeah.
I don't think it doesn't. Two cameras doesn't need to go that far. Although to be fair, they would obviously have to have a different chip inside to process it. I may say 500, right? 350 and 500. You see, plus mixed reality.
To the interface, David just got my imagination going there. The interface I want, right, is I go sit on my couch. I've got, like you said, the movie interface with all of my movies and TV shows all floating in front of me, of some apps that I can interact with, some games even that are built for hand tracking only. And then I see my controllers sort of glowing over there in the distance, right? And I go and pick those up, and suddenly five more games all pop up from a menu system coming out of the controllers, and it's all these great games that we all desperately want to play, climbing games, shooting games, all these games that are going to really take advantage of the haptics. I want it. I want Sony to deliver it. We'll see what they have in store. We'll see how uh how the partnerships shake out. I'm going to reiterate it again, that I think we're in a period for unexpected frenemies being made, unexpected partnerships popping out of the woodwork to take us into the next generation of personal computing as we see how these platforms develop. Anything else you want to talk about before we move to the end of this show here and tease a little bit about what's coming?
I just think that you're right to say that we could see some unexpected partnerships, but I want to once again note that we are already seeing some unexpected frenemy partnerships. Valve's Steam Link was one of the most significant moments in this industry. We don't talk about that enough, that Valve has an official app on the Quest store to connect to SteamVR that Meta promoted. If you described that situation 5 years ago, people would have called you crazy. The other one is the Microsoft partnership. Microsoft has essentially abandoned its own first party mixed reality hardware. HoloLens 2 is discontinued now, right? And instead, they have put all their cards into Meta. So we've seen these partners, we have seen Valve and Microsoft partnering with Meta in these senses. What other partnerships may we see?
Chrome is installable right on Steam Deck. It's like the first easy to install app on you can install on a Steam Deck, and then you use remote play, and you've got a bunch of people watching whatever is inside Chrome on multiple screens. That's a very cool thing. YouTube co-watching then on the flip side is what's available on the Meta ecosystem. So David's absolutely right. We're already seeing those partnerships emerge. Let's end this VR download here with a call to become a member, a patron, subscribe to our channel. Please support the work that we do here at UploadVR. It means an enormous amount. Thank you to our existing patrons. That's Podum, Mike Manzano, XR Developer News, and HoloNet. Thank you for your support. So right after this, I think we're going to have Holiday Hideaway premiere from Walkabout Mini Golf. So their new course is out. Our tour of the place with Don Carson and Lucas Martel is scheduled to appear as soon as that course is available for you to download and play at home. So that's a powerful new course, really, really cool new mechanics in there. Go check out the tour video. Right after that, we have an interview with Zach, where I had Zach sit where David is sitting over there. Zach is the creator of the Vertigo games. He started development when he was only 13 years old. Now he's 24 years old. He's got multiple games under his belt. He also worked at Valve for a time period, developing some of their prototype projects for using some of their new controllers. Talk to him briefly about that. He appears as a gray avatar over here, like Gray Dawn does appear. So he's got a strange avatar in our studio. So we'll try to get that bug fixed, but wanted to prepare everyone for that one. And
It's
then
side, nothing I can do until we upgrade our avatar system.
yeah, well, and I know our audience is out there waiting for our new reveals of our new avatars, so we'll get to it as soon as we stop being overwhelmed by news, and obviously help us with that problem by becoming a member and supporting our work directly, get us more, let us grow the team here on what we do. Then we've got a big showcase with a bunch of new reveals. We've got Gamescast next week with Don Hopper and I. We're already planning to get into Behemoth, which is planning a day 7 patch for Quest, as well as I Am Cat, which is just out on Apple Vision Pro with a reveal in our showcase. We've got reveals for a lot of cool games in the showcase. If you see something that you don't not a big fan of that pops up a trailer in the showcase, try to move on. Try to support the things you're really excited about in these events. These are small teams, individual devs trying to make an impact. We raised up a bunch of them. We've covered a bunch of them just in the last few days in this show and in this studio. Figment XR was here in the studio talking to us about their work. Zach from Vertigo Games is here in the studio talking about his work. And then we've got things like I Am Cat coming out, which came out of nowhere this year and topped the store charts. It's hard to make it as a VR developer out there, and we are trying to raise up interesting small teams that are actually doing really creative work. Walkabout Mini Golf is a great example of that. They're more than, I think, 30 people now. They release 2 courses a season about. They keep 8 courses in development at all times, and so they release a cadence now of 2 courses per season. That's $8 per season. I know that people are paying for that regular new content. We want to see more teams grow to be the size of Walkabout Mini Golf Mighty Coconut size, and the only way we do that is by focusing on quality development, good work, interesting ideas, and we've got a bunch of those in our showcase. So stay tuned for that later in the day. Thank you all for tuning in for VR Download. Thank you for the incredible work for this studio, David. We've had a lot of cool devs in here to see your studio and your work, and we'll get those avatars fixed as soon as we can. We'll see you in the future. See y'all.
Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you next week.